Tonight, when is an anchor an historic artifact? And changes in Canada's Indian Act.
MITV 11 o'clock news with Bruce Graham and Judy Powell.
And a good Thursday evening, everyone. A bit of a backfire for the Nova Scotia government today.
Last week, a cabinet minister challenged students to try shopping the BST way and see how much money they'd save. They didn't. Peter Angioni reports.
All the other things are.
While politicians continue debating the blended sales tax, these students are at the Halifax Shopping Centre, taking a government cabinet minister up on a challenge. Now, the question these students are trying to answer is what effect the blended sales tax is going to have on things like the grocery bill, buying school supplies, or purchasing clothing.
Okay, excellent. Good job. Ruler?
First stop, school supplies. Things like scribblers, pens, pencils, and loose leaf. The results of this first test don't favor the government. The students found the BST will nearly double the amount of tax they pay on school supplies.
So the new tax would actually be $5.20 versus $2.43.
Next stop, the grocery store. The students try to purchase what the average family of four would buy: cereal, salad dressing, and cleaning supplies. The results this time favor the government, but not by much. This time the students saved less than $1.
Well, so far it looks like there will be certainly an increase in the taxes paid by consumers in Nova Scotia for the BST.
The students quickly discover what they didn't want to.
So far we've learned that it's just going to cost us more.
Yeah, it's not really a good idea.
I don't like it because I'm going to have to pay it when I get older and my parents are going to have to pay it.
The students also went to Eaton's to make some clothing purchases. We weren't allowed in the store, but the result, the BST nearly doubled the tax paid on their clothing. The amount of tax on their total purchases would be roughly double with the blended sales tax. The students plan to donate the school supplies and food to a needy family, and they'll present their findings to the government next week. In Halifax, Peter Angioni, MITV News.
In Moncton, a 19-year-old man was ordered to stand trial for second-degree murder today. The preliminary hearing for William Edward Palmer ended when the judge ruled there was enough evidence for the case to proceed. Palmer is accused of killing 33-year-old Jeff Clark, who died in hospital a few days after being beaten outside a home on September 28th. A preliminary hearing for another suspect begins Tuesday. Donald Glenn Williston is also charged with second-degree murder in Clark's death.
Immigration Minister Lucien Robillard will not review the case of Gabriel and Delilah Gray. The two Guatemalans have been hiding out in a Dieppe church to avoid arrest and deportation for 5 months now. The minister's press secretary says no new facts have come to light in the case, and therefore the minister will not intervene. Convicts at a northern New Brunswick prison are suing the federal government. 32 inmates at the Atlantic Institution in Renouse say contaminated air inside the facility is making them sick.
We believe that despite the fact that we're in prison, that CSC has a responsibility to make sure that everyone is safe and, health-free, so to speak.
What are you looking for? What kind of damages?
I'm looking for loss of life, actually, because no one can tell us if there's long-term effects or short-term effects of what's going on here.
When the problem was identified, we took all the necessary steps that we felt were necessary to clean up the environment that was identified by Public Works. And we've taken measures to rectify that.
The air problem arose last year when mold was found in parts of the prison's ventilation system. Corrections Canada spent $125,000 to clean up the problem. Convicts are complaining that they continue to suffer from flu-like symptoms. Prison officials say they will carry out more air quality tests in the new year.
The Atlantic Health Sciences Corporation in St. John is looking at a $2 million deficit. The story now from MITV's Paul McLaughlin.
Hospital officials say they're able to do a lot more complicated procedures and operations than before. They say that's one reason a $1.3 million deficit may soar to $2 million. The health minister is aware of the deficit problem, but is not ready to commit extra money.
That people are going to be cared for, and so that's not a worry. The challenge for those of us who are responsible at the moment is to find the appropriate funding.
No, we're baffled. we don't know where the money's going.
Hospital watchdog Esmond Barry wonders why there's a deficit after years of service cuts.
Where's the money gone? Where is the money gone? That's what we'd like to know. And the people of this province should know where it's gone.
The medical community is skeptical. The hospital corporation can't cut any more corners or trim any more fat to ease the deficit problem. Dr. Brian Craig heads the St. John Medical Society.
I think the services that are being provided in the hospitals right now are as tight as they can possibly be.
Doctors say hospital officials will have a hard time to cut costs further.
I don't think they are prepared at this point in time to reduce services. I hope they're not. We most certainly cannot afford it. Patients cannot be tolerated in regards to reduction in services. That just won't happen. The physicians are extremely wary.
New Brunswick will spend more than $600 million for hospital services next year. In St. John, Paul McLaughlin, MITV News.
Christmas is the season of giving, but New Brunswick food banks and soup kitchens this year, well, it's turning out to be particularly lean.
Unless things turn around, 1997 could be a tough year. We have two reports for you tonight. First, to Paul Harpel.
Every morning, 7 days a week, a crowd lines up at the community kitchen in Fredericton. For some, this will be the only meal they'll put in their stomachs today. Many of the people here for a meal ask that we not take their picture. But those who were willing to talk say without the soup kitchen, they'd probably go hungry.
If I didn't have the kitchen here, I'd be starving myself. If I didn't have the kitchen here. But I come here every day, I do.
I'd encourage them to donate because, as I said, it's very important for the, say, disadvantaged people to have a regular place where they can come and have their nutritious meals every day.
I don't necessarily like the idea, but I'm thankful that I'm not on the street right now.
The month of December is usually when the community kitchen receives enough donations to make sure its shelves are filled year-round.
But this year, donations have been slow coming in.
At present time, I believe we have only taken in about $2,000 compared to that we normally at this time have taken in about 20.
Piers says the soup kitchen isn't about to close its doors, but without the support of the public, he says the people who come here will have to make do with less.
Instead of allowing people to come back for the seconds or thirds, they may have to suffice with one plate of food, which is difficult when this is the only meal that a person is getting in a 24-hour period.
The soup kitchen feeds about 90 people every day. In Fredericton, Paul Harpel, MITV News.
This was the Mapleton Food Bank last year as volunteers prepared for the Christmas rush. Over 3,500 people were fed between December 22nd and 24th. To do it again this year, it will cost $66,000.
As of yesterday, I was at $20,000. Now, we're not panicking yet. We'll panic next Wednesday or Thursday if the money doesn't come in.
Although the Christmas food drive is on, people looking for food at other times of the year must go elsewhere. Mapleton closed its doors in July, but the demand isn't going away.
It's not for the adults that we do this. It's for the child that we do this. So that the children living in Moncton or the children living in New Brunswick will be able to say, I lived in a good province. Because people always made sure that I had something to eat, no matter how poor we were.
That's exactly what volunteers like Bill Irving are doing at the Christian Food Bank. It's trying to pick up where Mapleton left off.
There's no work out there, and there's a lot of people that can't work. They have no education, or they're sick, or, they're seniors, they're single moms with children, and there's moms and dads that just can't make ends meet. They don't make enough money. Oh, it's getting worse. It's not getting any better.
Another key factor when it comes to feeding the hungry is Food Bank Moncton. Essentially, it's a huge warehouse that services 16 other food banks and 2 soup kitchens in the Tri-County area. It, too, is run by volunteers. It has an operating budget, but no food budget. And thanks to donations, about 500 tons of food pass through here each year. While everyone in this business agrees the need continues to grow, there is a ray of hope. The Open Hands Food Bank in Moncton is expected to open in January. It will serve some of the people who used to rely on Mapleton. In Moncton, Mark McNulty, MITV News.
Officials at the New Brunswick Museum had to do some fast talking today. There's a chance a piece of the province's heritage, an anchor from the sailing ship Marco Polo, was sent to a smelter in Cape Breton. Lauren Daltrop has the story.
Here's a riddle. When is an anchor from a sailing ship not just an anchor, but an historical artifact? The answer, when it comes from the famous ship Marco Polo. The New Brunswick Museum has one anchor on display they're certain comes from the sailing ship. But suddenly, there were some questions about the pedigree of another ship's anchor that was shipped off this week to the scrap heap.
As you call it, so-called missing anchor has been disposed of, and we're satisfied that it's not an artifact, not part of the collection, and we're not going to make any attempts to retrieve it.
The New Brunswick Museum's chief curator spent his morning prowling the grounds of this recycling company. And Gary Hughes says he's certain the anchor did not come from New Brunswick's famous 19th century sailing ship.
Somebody suggested that it was from the Marco Polo. I really discredit that. I don't think it is at all. Another member of the staff.
Hughes says the confusion came from the old anchor's origins. It came from the museum in 1959 after being caught in a fisherman's net off of PEI near the site when the Marco Polo sank in 1883. He says it was in rough shape after being exposed to the elements for the last 35 years. Then 2 days ago, it was discarded with no questions asked. That is, until a staff member wondered if they had done the right thing.
I'd been checking records through the morning, and I'm now quite convinced that the matter has been successfully resolved.
In other words, it's gone to the smelter and it's melted down.
Yep.
In St. John, Lauren Daltrop, MITV News.
Wow, hope he's right.
I hope so too.
All right, Canada has put in a bid to host the 1999 Francophone Summit in New Brunswick.
The event brings together the leaders of all the Francophone and bilingual nations to discuss issues of mutual interest. Intergovernmental Affairs Minister Bernard Richard says it would be a chance to show the world how the province's two linguistic communities can live together.
That's right. The minister says there may be competition to host the conference because Romania and also Haiti have expressed interest as well.
Good luck to them.
Well, coming up in national and world news tonight, changes in the way for, or on the way for Canada's controversial Indian Act.
And we'll visit with some cuddly creatures at the San Diego Zoo. That's coming up. Stay with us.
Well, the federal government introduced a new Indian Act today to booze from the public gallery.
The new act supposedly gives bands greater control over reserve affairs, but Ovid Mercredi says the new act is just like a new cage. Joni Niccolo reports.
For the first time in 45 years, the Indian Act has been altered, but the federal government is playing it safe with its introduction. It's a parallel package, giving native bands the choice between new and old.
There's a fear factor out there because this is something new. So I'm saying, read it. If you feel comfortable with it, you have the right to opt in. If you don't...
The government says the new Indian Act gives First Nations more control over their own affairs, making it easier for them to run day-to-day business on the reserve. But the Grand Chief of the Assembly of First Nations strongly rejects everything about the new act.
It's a sneaky way of hiding paternalism. It's still a cage. It's just a new cage.
In Vancouver, natives are concerned about lack of consultation.
We're very concerned that the minister seems to be proceeding without appropriate direction being heeded from the chiefs across this country.
But Manitoba chiefs have a different opinion.
The proposition that has been advanced in the House today by Ron Irwin meets all of the objectives that we set out for ourselves.
Manitoba chiefs don't necessarily like the Indian Act amendments. They like that the government gave them a choice.
The minister can go ahead and make all the changes he wants. If every First Nation in Manitoba right across Canada says, well, we don't want to use the options, what is that?
Each band will decide for itself what option it wants. So far, most of the 600 band chiefs oppose the changes. Next week, the Assembly of First Nations will reinforce their opposition at an emergency meeting right here in Winnipeg. Joni Niccolo, Global News, Winnipeg.
Ottawa is now looking for a major shift in the way it fights crime, and this time it's thinking prevention. The proposal calls for funds equal to 1% of annual spending on police, courts, and penitentiaries to go to speed up development of crime prevention programs. Most of the initial $30 million would go to better neighborhood security and strategies to help schools and social workers keep teenagers from crime.
A tough day all round for the Chrétien government. Now that John Nunziata is out of the Liberal Party, he's letting the Prime Minister have it with both barrels. The Toronto MP says Chrétien promised during confidential caucus meetings that GST would be scrapped. He accused the government of siding with first-degree murderers and also claims Liberal MPs vote like trained seals.
An early Christmas present for employees of Radio-Canada International today. Canada's foreign broadcast service will get another source of federal government funding. It was due to be shut down as part of the CBC cuts this week, although details weren't known tonight. Foreign Affairs Minister Lloyd Axworthy is reported saying money will be found to keep Radio International alive. He says he'll be working to find a long-term solution to the broadcaster's money problems.
Internationally tonight, Oday Hussein, Saddam Hussein's eldest son, was shot and wounded while driving his car in Baghdad today. He is listed in stable condition. There is no word who was behind that attack.
And relations between the United States and Iran are less than perfect, that's for certain. While the U.S. blasts the country every chance it gets, many other nations are doing business, big business, with the Iranians. Steve Hurst with that story.
Moving into a second term, the Clinton administration finds itself nearly alone among major allies in its treatment of Iran.
U.S.-Iranian relations obviously are very bad at the moment. The United States is fundamentally refusing to deal with the government of Iran. A judgment that is not widely shared by the rest of the world, and we're off by ourselves to a large extent in that regard.
And while the United States weighs evidence from Saudi Arabia claiming Iranian involvement in the Khobar Towers bombing last summer, some in the Clinton administration are studying possible new approaches on Iran. The U.S. refusal to accept at face value Saudi claims of Iranian sponsorship of the deadly blast last June is seen by some in the administration as a signal that Washington is taking great care not to increase its own isolation. Iran has categorically rejected published accounts linking it with the bombing. And a senior official tells CNN that the evidence offered by the Saudis could likewise be used to blame Syria. Nevertheless, U.S. rhetoric has not cooled.
The Iranian government is a government that sponsors terrorism, trying to acquire nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. All of us need to isolate Iran, not to bring it back into the community of nations, but to isolate it.
Despite vigorous efforts to bring other allies onto the U.S. bandwagon by Secretary of State Warren Christopher, who blasts Iran in public each chance he gets, Turkey, France, and Germany all do business with Tehran. Washington has also failed to convince Russia to cancel a nuclear reactor project with Iran. So with all that in mind, senior officials say the Clinton administration is examining how it might better approach the troublesome Iranians, either to tame their behavior or convince key allies to stop doing business with Tehran. Steve Hurst, CNN, the State Department.
All right, time to take a look at the weather forecast now, and we're going to have some showers.
Some showers, but it's mild over the next couple of days. Bruce, let's take a look at what's happening out there tonight. We do have partly cloudy skies in northern New Brunswick tonight, lows anywhere between -3 and -6 degrees. For southern New Brunswick, we have partly cloudy skies as well over Fredericton and St. John areas, but Moncton will still have a few isolated showers or wet flurries tonight, lows of 0. Showers, drizzle, even a chance of a wet flurry over Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia this evening. Lows anywhere between 0 and +3 degrees. Northerly winds between 20 and 30 kilometers an hour. It's not going to change much tomorrow. We are going to see a little bit of sunshine in northwestern New Brunswick, but then we're going to have isolated flurries or showers, highs to 1 degree. Similar conditions for Fredericton and St. John. But for the eastern coast, we are looking at cloudy skies with either flurries or showers, highs around 2 degrees. Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia is looking at cloudy skies tomorrow with drizzle, not what we're used to getting in December. Highs between 4 or 6 degrees, except along the south shore in the valley area. Mostly cloudy skies there. Highs between 4 and 7 Normal high is right around 2 degrees. 3-day forecast looks like this. We are going to see clouds Saturday, Sunday, and Monday across the entire region. We are looking at some rain showers, some scattered flurries thrown in there, and some drizzle, too. So it's not going to be horribly bright over the weekend, Bruce. But fact is, if you don't want to shovel any snow, this is good news for you. And if you're a skier, it's very bad news. Simple as that.
Okay, stay with us. The 11 o'clock news continues after these messages.
You're watching MITV 11 o'clock news.
Well, Doug Basin is here now with a Sportsline preview.
Well, the big news tonight, Jean-Sébastien Giguère gets his first NHL start tonight for the Hartford Whalers, the Whale in Philadelphia. So a tough challenge for Giguère, but doing okay so far. We'll have some updates and some highlights of the Jigger in action. It's a good thing for him. Good for the Mooseheads, too.
Yeah, surprise probably for him. I'm sure he didn't expect to...
The Whale are a pretty busy team right now, and with their starting goaltender hurt, Jason Muzzatti could not play all the games. But busy month for Jean-Sébastien. He goes tomorrow to the training camp for the World Junior teams.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Doug.
Looking at you, Jigger.
Okay.
Okay, finally, tonight, a couple of animal stories for you. First, a rare pair of animals, on display at the San Francisco Zoo. Visitors can check out an albino alligator and an albino kangaroo. How about that? The color, of course, what makes these, or the lack thereof the color, makes these animals rather special.
Wow, and they are neat. And at the same time, the zoo has a new guest. Meet Pumpkin, a rare leaf monkey. Zoo officials named her not for her color, but because they believe she was born on Halloween. Only 10,000 of the species remain worldwide. Many were killed during the Vietnam War. San Francisco Zoo now has 8 of the species. What's that ever mean?
Looks something like our PA, doesn't it?
No, that's our broadcast for this Thursday. Thanks so much for watching.
Stay tuned now for Sportsline with Doug Basin. Have a good evening, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to comment on any aspect of our programming, write to us at MITV News, 14 Acreley Boulevard, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, postal code B3B1J3. You can also fax us at area code 902-481-7427 or send us an email. Our address is mitv.news@ns.simpatico.ca. This is MITV News.